Imagine this. You meet someone who feels safe, kind, and genuinely interested in knowing you. At first, it feels like a spark, something you've been waiting for, maybe even craving deep down. The laughter flows easily, the conversations linger, and your heart whispers, maybe this time will be different. But then, almost without warning, something inside you shifts. Their presence starts to feel heavy. Their care starts to feel like pressure, and the closeness that once felt like comfort now feels suffocating. Your body tenses, your mind races, and before you even understand what's happening, you find yourself pulling away. Not because you don't care, not because you don't want them, but because intimacy itself feels dangerous. This is the hidden struggle of the avoidant heart, to crave love and connection, but to fear it at the very same time, to long for someone to stay, yet to build walls so high that no one can climb them. For many people living with avoidant tendencies or avoidant personality disorder, this paradox defines nearly every relationship. It's not about being cold or unfeeling. It's about being caught between two instincts, the need for connection and the need for safety. I've spent years studying and working with people who live in this tension, and what I've learned is this: avoidance isn't laziness, or indifference, or even rejection. It's survival. It's the brain's way of saying, you've been hurt before. Protect yourself now. And so, the avoidant heart develops strategies, pulling away when things get too intense, downplaying emotions, keeping conversations shallow, or distracting itself when vulnerability creeps too close. I remember one client, let's call her Sarah. She was in her mid-30s, successful in her career, funny, articulate, and deeply thoughtful. From the outside, she looked like she had everything together, but when she sat in my office, her voice trembled as she said, "Every relationship I've ever had ends the same way. They tell me I'm distant, that I don't let them in, and they're right. But the harder I try to stay close, the more I panic. It's like my whole body screams at me to run." Sarah's story is not unique. In fact, research suggests that around 2.7% of the population may meet criteria for avoidant personality disorder, and many more live with avoidant attachment patterns without a formal diagnosis. That means millions of people walk around carrying this same invisible contradiction, desperately wanting closeness while fearing it. But where does this come from? For many, the roots stretch back to childhood. Imagine a young boy who reaches for comfort, only to be met with criticism, or a girl who shares her feelings, only to be dismissed or mocked. When a child learns that vulnerability equals pain, they adapt, they pull back, they protect themselves. And slowly, a pattern forms. If I stay distant, I won't be hurt. What starts as survival in childhood becomes a habit in adulthood, a habit that can sabotage even the deepest desires for love. What makes avoidance so difficult to understand is that it doesn't look the same for everyone. Some avoidant individuals appear completely independent, even proud of their solitude. Others appear warm at first, only to retreat once intimacy deepens. Still others bounce between closeness and distance, caught in the exhausting push-pull of come closer, go away. And for those who love an avoidant partner, the experience can feel confusing, even painful. One moment, you feel chosen, cherished, deeply seen. The next, you feel shut out, ignored, or even abandoned. This push-pull dynamic often leaves avoidant people filled with guilt. They don't want to hurt others. They don't want to keep running. But when their chest tightens and their instincts scream danger, they find themselves retreating anyway. As one man once told me, it's like watching myself sabotage everything I want. I can't stop it, but I hate myself for it. And this is where compassion becomes essential, because avoidance isn't about a lack of care. It's about a history of hurt. It's not about rejecting love. It's about not knowing how to feel safe in it. Once we understand that, the avoidant heart stops looking cold and starts looking wounded. And wounds, as we know, can heal. Let's talk about hyper-awareness, because this is one of the avoidant heart's sharpest tools. Imagine walking into a room and feeling every shift in tone, every pause in conversation, every flicker of someone's expression, as if it were a warning sign. This is the avoidant mind scanning for danger, always bracing for rejection. A partner sighs, and the avoidant immediately wonders, are they upset with me? A friend takes a little longer to text back, and suddenly the mind spirals. They're pulling away. I knew this would happen. This hypervigilance is exhausting. It doesn't allow for rest or ease in relationships. Instead, it creates a constant state of anxiety where love feels fragile and temporary. And yet, it's not chosen, it's wired. Research shows that avoidant individuals often display heightened sensitivity in brain regions linked to emotional regulation, especially under stress. That means their fear response is amplified, even when the situation is safe. One young woman I met, let's call her Emily, described it like this. It's like having a smoke alarm in my head that goes off even when there's no fire. Every time someone gets close, I'm waiting for the flames. I know it's irrational, but it feels real. Now, let's pause for a moment. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, I want you to take a deep breath. Notice how your body feels right now. Maybe your chest is tight. Maybe your shoulders tense. That's okay. That tension is part of the avoidant experience, the instinct to pull away when something feels too close, even words on a screen or a voice in your ear. But here's the truth. Noticing is the first step to change. You don't need to fix it all at once. Just noticing, oh, I'm pulling back right now, is already a seed of healing. Because here's the hopeful part. Avoidance isn't permanent. The avoidant brain, shaped by years of learned patterns, can also learn new ones. Neuroplasticity means we are not locked into our past. Healing is possible, but healing doesn't come from force. It comes from gentleness, from learning to stay just one breath longer in closeness than you did yesterday, from practicing vulnerability in tiny, safe doses, from giving yourself permission to want love, even when it terrifies you. And sometimes healing begins not with others, but with yourself. For many avoidant individuals, self-compassion is the hardest skill to learn. After all, when you've spent years believing you're too much or not enough, kindness toward yourself feels unnatural. But self-compassion is the antidote to avoidance. It says, I don't need to earn my worth. I don't need to hide my needs. I am allowed to take up space. In the next part of our journey, we'll go deeper into how avoidance affects relationships, what avoidant people wish their partners understood, and how both sides can move toward connection without fear. But for now, I want to leave you with this. If you have ever felt broken because closeness scares you, you are not broken. You are human. Your patterns were formed to protect you, and they've done their job well. But now, you have the chance to learn new ways of being. And step by step, breath by breath, you can move from fear to connection. Because the avoidant heart, though wounded, is not closed. It still beats with longing. And with patience, compassion, and courage, it can learn not just to survive, but to love. When we talk about avoidance, it's easy to think only about the individual, their inner conflict, their self-doubt, their invisible armor. But avoidance is never lived in isolation. It always creates ripples, extending outward into family bonds, friendships, and romantic relationships. To understand the avoidant mind more deeply, we have to explore not only what happens inside, but also how these inner battles shape the spaces between people. When we talk about avoidance, It's easy to think only about the individual, their inner conflict, their self-doubt, their invisible armor. But avoidance is never lived in isolation. It always creates ripples, extending outward into family bonds, friendships, and romantic relationships. To understand the avoidant mind more deeply, we have to explore not only what happens inside, but also how these inner battles shape the spaces between people. Family is where avoidance is often born, but it's also where it shows itself most quietly. Picture a child who grows into adolescence carrying an invisible wall. They laugh at the dinner table, but when the conversation turns to feelings, they retreat into silence. Parents may see this as moodiness or stubbornness. Siblings may mistake it for indifference. But beneath the surface, that child is learning the same lessons over and over. Vulnerability doesn't feel safe here. Take Sarah, for example. She grew up in a home where emotions were met with criticism. If she cried, she was told she was too sensitive. If she expressed anger, she was labeled ungrateful. By the time she turned 16, Sarah stopped showing emotion altogether around her family. She learned to present a calm, neutral face even when she was hurting inside. Her parents thought she was easygoing and independent, when in reality, she was practicing avoidance at its purest form. As an adult, Sarah told me that she still finds family gatherings difficult. She loves her parents and siblings deeply, but she feels a quiet fear whenever she imagines opening up about her real struggles. It's like I'm standing in a crowded room, she explained, but I'm alone inside my head. I want to speak, but I know they won't hear me the way I need them to. This is the hidden wound of avoidant family dynamics, the illusion of closeness without emotional intimacy. On the surface, everything looks fine, but underneath, there's a silent gap where vulnerability should live. Avoidance doesn't only affect family, it spills into friendships as well. Friendships thrive on reciprocity, on the exchange of both joys and struggles. But for the avoidant person, opening up to friends can feel like exposing a weakness, an unacceptable burden to place on someone else. Consider the story of Marcus. He was well liked at work, known for his humor and easygoing nature. He had plenty of acquaintances but struggled to maintain close friendships. When his best friend once asked him, "How are you, really?" Marcus laughed it off and changed the subject. Inside, though, he was aching. He had recently gone through a painful breakup, but the thought of leaning on a friend for support filled him with dread. What if I drag them down? What if they see me as needy? He thought. This pattern is common in avoidant minds. Friendships become arenas of safe distance. The avoidant person shows up for fun, for activities, for surface-level connection. But when the deeper emotional currents begin to flow, they quietly step back. To their friends, this can feel like disinterest. To the avoidant person, it feels like protection. The result? Many avoidant individuals find themselves surrounded by people, yet feeling profoundly lonely. This paradox is painful. The heart craves closeness, but the fear of rejection or burden silences the very words that would build connection. If avoidance creates ripples in family and friendships, then in romantic relationships it creates full waves. Love is, after all, the most intimate form of human connection, and it's also the most terrifying arena for someone with avoidant patterns. Here, the push-pull dynamic reveals itself most intensely. On one hand, the avoidant person yearns for closeness. They fall in love. They dream of partnership. They want the safety of being known. On the other hand, the very intimacy they crave activates their deepest fears. Love feels like standing on a cliff's edge. Thrilling, beautiful, but also terrifyingly unstable. Let me share the story of Anna and David. Anna described herself as clingy in relationships. She wanted constant reassurance, affection, and open communication. David, who carried avoidant tendencies, found himself overwhelmed. He loved Anna, but every time she asked, "Do you love me? Do you really want to be with me?" he felt suffocated. His instinct was to withdraw, to spend more time alone, to retreat into hobbies, to create distance. This, of course, triggered Anna's fears even more. The more she reached out, the more he pulled back. The more he pulled back, the more she reached out. This cycle is known as the anxious avoidant trap, and it's one of the most common relational dynamics today. It leaves both partners feeling unseen and misunderstood. The anxious partner feels abandoned, while the avoidant partner feels invaded. But beneath the surface, both are responding to the same fear, the fear of losing love. Why does this happen? Neuroscience offers some insight. Studies show that avoidant individuals often display hyperactivation in brain regions tied to emotional threat detection. In simple terms, their nervous systems are on high alert. A small pause in conversation feels ominous. A shift in tone sounds like rejection. A partner pulling out their phone during dinner sparks thoughts of abandonment. This heightened vigilance creates exhaustion. Imagine walking through life as if every relationship is a tightrope, where one wrong step could lead to rejection. No wonder avoidance feels safer. But this very avoidance reinforces the cycle. The less the avoidant person opens up, the more distant they feel, and the more their fears seem confirmed. Here's the paradox. The avoidant mind protects itself from hurt by avoiding intimacy. But that very avoidance ensures the loneliness it dreads. Breaking this cycle doesn't happen through force. It happens through gentle awareness. I once worked with a client named Noah who said, "I've ended every relationship I ever had because the moment it got serious, I panicked." Through therapy, Noah began practicing micro-moments of vulnerability. Instead of pouring out his whole heart at once, he practiced sharing small truths. "I had a hard day today. I feel nervous about this. I missed you." At first, even these tiny admissions felt unbearable. But over time, Noah noticed something. The world didn't end. His partner didn't leave. In fact, these small shares deepen the bond. This is the key for avoidant healing. Not a dramatic overnight change, but small steps toward trust. And each step builds evidence that vulnerability, while scary, can also lead to safety. Avoidance may shape family dynamics, friendships, and love, but it doesn't have to define them forever. Healing begins when we notice the ripples, when we see not only the individual struggle, but also how those struggles play out in connection with others. And most importantly, when we begin to imagine a different way forward. Avoidance may shape family dynamics, friendships, and love, but it doesn't have to define them forever. Healing begins when we notice the ripples, when we see not only the individual struggle, but also how those struggles play out in connection with others. And most importantly, when we begin to imagine a different way forward. One of the most powerful truths about avoidant attachment and avoidant personality disorder is that these patterns are not fixed identities. They are learned adaptations, shields crafted in childhood, carried into adulthood, and worn so long they start to feel like part of who you are. But like any armor, they can be set down. Healing, then, is not about erasing avoidance, but about recognizing the humanity beneath it and allowing new ways of relating to slowly emerge. I once worked with a client, let's call him Sam, who had spent decades keeping people at arm's length. His relationships were brief, his friendships distant. Yet as we talked, one thing became clear. He didn't actually want distance. He wanted closeness desperately, but the thought of depending on someone felt like handing them a loaded weapon aimed at his heart. Over time, we worked not on forcing him into intimacy, but on helping him tolerate the idea of it. Small steps, sending a vulnerable text, asking for help with something minor, sharing one uncomfortable truth. Each time he expected rejection. Each time instead, he received kindness. And slowly, his nervous system began to unlearn the old equation. Closeness equals danger. Stories like Sam's show that healing does not come in grand gestures. It comes in fragments, in the willingness to stay present a few seconds longer in a conversation, in choosing to listen instead of withdrawing, in daring to believe that not everyone will walk away. These small acts are not trivial. They are revolutions against a lifetime of fear. For those who love someone with avoidant patterns, patience becomes the greatest gift you can offer. Avoidant partners may need more time to process emotions. They may retreat when they care the most. This doesn't mean they don't value you. It means they are fighting a battle you cannot always see. What helps is not pressure, but steadiness. Gentle reminders that you are safe to approach, that love can exist without demands, and that their presence matters, even in silence. And for avoidant individuals themselves, perhaps the most radical act is to extend compassion inward. To realize that the instinct to pull away is not evidence of being broken, but evidence of a nervous system that has worked tirelessly to protect you. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" perhaps a kinder question is, "What has my avoidance been trying to protect me from?" Because the moment you understand your patterns as protection rather than failure, you begin to loosen the shame that keeps them alive. As we close, I want to leave you with this thought. Beneath every avoidant heart lies a profound capacity for love. Avoidant individuals are often deeply sensitive, deeply thoughtful, and deeply loyal once trust is built. Their walls are not proof of disinterest, but of how much the risk of losing love truly matters to them. And if you are avoidant yourself, know this: you are not doomed to isolation. Healing may be slow, but it is real. Connection may be terrifying, but it is possible. The journey is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully yourself, someone who can love without fear ruling every step, someone who can accept closeness without mistaking it for danger, and perhaps most importantly, someone who finally learns that needing others is not weakness, but one of the bravest things a human being can ever do. So if you've recognized yourself in these words today, take heart. The story of avoidance does not end in withdrawal. It can end in renewal. And if you're listening as someone who loves an avoidant partner or friend, remember, your patience, your understanding, and your consistency can become the safe harbor that allows their walls to slowly come down. Because inside the avoidant mind, beyond the fear and hesitation, is a heart that has always wanted the same thing we all want: to be seen, to be accepted, and to be loved. And that longing, no matter how buried, is always worth the journey.